Today I just wanted to take you through and give you a bit of an overview of the department in which I work, and then talk about some of the things we're doing in information services and how we're trying to drive renewal, as we describe it in our agency, for vulnerable Queenslanders. So very quickly, a bit of an overview. I want to also drill in on contestability today. So that is a key anchor, if you like, to everything that we do, and we'll be driving through a number of reforms under that particular banner. So the Department of Communities, Child Safety and Disability Services, it's a little bit like Andrew's, a bit of a mouthful. Essentially, our key role is to support resilience throughout Queensland. So we try to make communities as resilient as possible. It's not about handouts, it's not about welfare, it's about building capability, sustainability for all Queenslanders. A key focus for us is about being equitable and making sure that those who are less fortunate than others have the same opportunities and are afforded the same respect within the community. Within the department itself, our goal is to be the #1 provider, if you like, of human services across Australia. And the reforms that we're undertaking are leading the way through many of the jurisdictions across Australia. The services themselves, we very much rely on what we call the NGOs, or the non-government organisations. We work with over 800, and that will increase over time. And we deliver services across the state, of course, 7 regions. So from the very, very tip of Cape York, we have offices up there, coming down the Gulf, Weipa, Arakoon, etc., and then down through central Queensland and, of course, the coast. We have a large number of centres that we use throughout the state. There are 83 formal service centres, but we would probably have over 200 points of presence across the state. Just some stats there. I won't spend a lot of time on that, but we have almost 6,000 employees, most of them focused today on frontline service delivery. So a key focus of the Newman government was to refocus employees and services and resources towards frontline. And you can see, I split it into 2, but about 88% of our organisation is out there delivering services to Queenslanders. We rely very heavily, or we manage large number of grants, and there's over $1.3 billion worth of grants that we allocate across the sector and to individuals each year to help manage and improve their lives. We also work under a number of fairly complex frameworks. As you can imagine, the area is fairly closely studied by academia, and we use the Human Services Quality Framework to ensure the quality of our service delivery. Within information services, I've focused on Communities, Child Safety and Disability Services. That's the agency in which I sit. But we also support a number of other agencies. So we support the youth justice component within the Department of Justice and Attorney General. That was part of Communities prior to the new government. Through a machinery of government change, it now sits in Justice and Attorney General. So we continue to provide those IT services to that particular part of the organisation. We support DCCSDS in its entirety, and we also support housing services, homelessness services, and portfolio management and operations within housing and public works. What that requires me to do is, for those agencies that have information services areas themselves, we work closely with those areas around how we integrate and provide as seamless a service as possible to those particular users. Within information services, our purpose, I think the key point I want to pick up here is around reform. So we don't see ourselves as sitting there providing a network. We don't see ourselves as counting PCs or blocking access to YouTube or things like that. Our key role is to drive reform, and we partner very, very closely with the business. We embed ourselves within the business wherever possible to understand and work with them to drive through the reforms of the agency. Another key point here is how we do it. and it will be done through innovation, partnering and service excellence. So that's probably a change to what I might have said 3 or 4 years ago. And a key one there is partnering. And we're seeing to you, to industry, to help us as much as possible to bring through that innovation and that quality of service. Within our IS strategic plan, which will be attached in the handouts, we have 12 key strategies. I won't focus on all of them. I've spoken to a couple of them around engagement, innovation and collaboration. A key one a bit further down is around contestability, and I'll drill into contestability a little bit more. It links in with the one down in the bottom corner around sourcing. And again, we want to look to the industry to be able to partner with us. And partnership is the key word. I'll talk more about that in a second. Security's got an increased focus for us. Obviously with G20 coming up, there's an increased focus, which is a very good thing. I think it helps everyone get the house in order around security and security compliance. The only other one is resourcing. Now, we value our resources very, very highly, and through a number of processes and plans that we have in place, we're working with them around the reforms that we're making to our business. So, you may hear different rumours about whether it's unsettling or what's going on in government, but our key focus is to respect our staff and to ensure that they have career pathways either within our organisation or with other organisations. The 3 key pillars within the Department of Communities, Child Safety and Disability Services are around. The first one is child and family reform. This comes out of an inquiry that was done. You would have heard of it, the Carmody inquiry. It looked into the protection of children across the state. The key focus coming out of the Carmody inquiry is to put families first and be more proactive in the way that we deliver services. So don't sit back in a policing role. Be proactive and help families when we start to see indicators of trouble. What this means from an information services perspective is we need to join up more information that's across government and be able to assist families when there are certain indicators of them needing help. We will work closely with the NGO sector, the ones who are very, very close to the ground, to understand families that are needing support. The second one is around our disability services functions. National Disability Insurance Scheme, which I'm sure, again, you would have heard of, is a major reform across all of Australia around how we can better resource and better serve those with a disability. The activities there will be around individualised funding, and this will enable the individual with the disability to make choices about how and when they receive services and who they receive them from. Traditionally, governments have come along and said, you will get, well, based on an assessment, you will get this service from this provider. In future, individuals will be able to decide which services they want. In some cases, people may need assistance, and service brokers will be offered to help them decide and plan for the best services to manage their particular disability. The last one, social and human services investment reforms. This one sits across all other reforms in the agency and is really us looking at how do we transform the way we fund services. So with that $1.3 billion worth of grants over 800 organisations, you can imagine the complexity of ensuring that we're getting quality of service and things like that. So that's looking at cutting red tape, reducing the compliance effort, but increasing our visibility around the quality of service that we're receiving. Within the organisation, we have a number of major business systems. I won't drill into all these, but each of them performs a significant function, and most of them are across the state. So they're large corporate systems that we use for approximately 2,000 to 3,000 people for each of those systems there. Probably the one to touch on at the moment, community recovery. I think the Minister might have talked about community recovery earlier. The role of my agency is to come in after the disaster and rebuild the community, not from an asset or a hard concept, but from a people concept. So we help people with certain services. There may be things like mental health services that are needed. There may be issues with food supply and things like that. So we come in and help. We set up usually offices in that particular area. We have outreach teams that go to houses, ensuring people are okay. There's also a large grants component associated with that. So our program of work, again, probably following a number of systems. I'll drill in a little bit more on this. Our BIS program, that's essentially the system that manages disability services. We're changing that and reforming that to align with individualised funding. Care pay. Now, this is a large project for us from a risk perspective, if you like. So this is the system that pays foster carers. So for us, and I daren't say health payroll, but for us it's like a payroll system, and so we're taking zero risk approach to it to ensure that there's no issue with the funding that's provided to those particular carers. Obviously seen as, if you like, almost volunteer. They do get paid, but it's almost like a volunteer, pillars of the community. It would be very, very poor form of us to in any way disrupt their funding and their payment stream. Community recovery reform. So this is a huge reform around, if you like, right from the start, where we're looking for volunteers, and we do that across the government sector. So public servants within Queensland Government volunteer, put their hand up to say, I will do community recovery. They go on a register. Then during a disaster, we deploy them through a variety of systems that we're using at the moment. We then are developing, or in the process of designing, systems that will allow us to do that outreach function and the payment function to individuals. So that will be a huge reform for us. Typically, individuals have had to come to us. What we're trying to do is reach out to them. Data governance, including open data. I'm sure most of you would be across open data. Linking with that, we're looking at how do we better manage our data flows within the organisation. So we'll reform there. The integrated client management system, this is the system that supports the child safety component of our business. Very large system. We partnered with Microsoft and are now partnering with Dialogue to construct that system. What we're looking at here is an architectural reform. So it has InfoPath technology within it, which isn't on the roadmap for Microsoft. So we're in the process of modifying that and potentially mobilising the solution at the same time. The Carmody response, I've touched on that, but obviously some huge reforms in ICT associated with Carmody, very much around information sharing and making sure that NGOs get the right information. So need to be careful not to give away private information for individuals, but them to be able to get the right information to undertake their particular duties. Social investment reform I've touched on. We've also got a couple more. We're running an EDLP program and child safety mobility. Again, making it possible for child safety officers who undertake an extremely difficult job, and I can't overstate that too much. They go out to very difficult situations. They talk in hostile, in some cases, instances with families, and need to talk to them about their children, how their children are going, whether there are any issues, and potentially that their children may have to be removed. So you can imagine the hostility of that sort of environment and the difficulty of that job. We want to empower them a lot more with greater mobility solutions, the ability to do things like print forms out from cars so that individuals can sign them, all that sort of thing, to really simplify their job from an administrative purpose so that they can focus on that difficult task that they have. Contestability. I promised I'd talk about this. We're quite advanced in our contestability processes within both the departments. So all of those reforms I spoke about before have a contestability component to them, but also within information services. We've completed step 1, our strategic assessment, and we're up to step 2, the preliminary evaluation. Each of the services that we're looking at initially are listed there, so messaging and collaboration, ICT infrastructure, managed devices and telecommunications. And there are the respective dates. So messaging and collaboration, we've finished that initial assessment process. So very soon we'll be looking to the market to address the delivery of those particular services. In most cases, and I think all of those, we'll actually be looking to the private sector to deliver those services for us. Finally, I just wanted to touch on future directions. Within the department itself, obviously managing demand for services. This is very important because obviously there's a particular pool of money available and we need to make sure it's distributed equitably. So we need to have good, robust intake systems to make sure we can assess need. We want to maximise return on investment and results, obviously. Managing the service system change, so making sure that NGOs have certain capabilities and from an information perspective that they have the right information to deliver the services they need to across Queensland. The stakeholder engagement is very critical for the agency and also growing industry. Linking to some ICT innovations we're working on, mobility is a large one, video is a large issue for us. Reconnecting children with families is important across such a vast state. Information sharing, I've touched on before. Collaboration and shared case management, so working with that NGO sector. So thank you. Just to touch on a couple of things. Really what we're looking for is for industry to help us innovate. And a good example is if you compare my slides with the great graphics that Fiona had, I obviously need some help with perhaps some, I don't know, graphical communications or something like that. So if you do that, maybe see me straight after. But seriously, we do want to look to industry. We don't want to prescribe solutions. We want to say, here is our challenge, here is our business problem, how can you help us innovate? I just put one caveat, and I'm sure all CIOs across Queensland Government would put this to you. It's not a one-off. It's not a, if you like, here's a solution, good luck, see you later. We're in there for a partnership. We want to work with you. We'd be looking at you to host the solution, support the solution, and help us evolve that solution in line with our business going forward. Thank you.